This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 465 of the Dressage Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products and Total Saddle Fit. Tonight on the show, we are going to get to some listener questions, and we've got listener Karina trying to stump us with a tough question on leg aids.
This is Reese Koffler-Stanfield from Georgetown, Kentucky.
And this is Philip Parks from Rockwood, Ontario, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show.
Hey, Phil.
Hey, how's it going? It's May now.
It's May, and I'm back home. Yes.
Crazy.
I know. Crazy. But
That's good news, though.
I'm happy to be back in Lexington. I don't know how many people, we had a flood here in my house in Kentucky, so we actually were slightly stranded a little bit. Not that that's hardship duty in Florida, but we were there an extra month. So I got a huge shout out to Jenna Wright. She was my barn manager here in Kentucky this winter, and she did an amazing job. She had to deal with the Serve Pro guys. So wanted to give her a shout out, but we're back in Kentucky and the horses are so happy to be here. And we missed all the bad weather because it's been beautiful since we've been home.
Fantastic.
Happy to be
back. And well, we're just after the, what do we call it now? Rolex is no longer a Rolex.
I know. Land Rover. It's Land Rover. I think we call it the Kentucky. I don't know, but we did. We just had the
Horse Park event.
The Horse Park.
The Lexington event. Should we call it? I don't know.
I think people are calling it Land Rover actually, but it was a great weekend. I'm not gonna lie. I got home and then promptly got the flu. So I was pretty sick, but I did do a fun event on Sunday, and I had several listeners come up and say hi, which was always fun. We always love seeing and hear from our listeners, but I did the Champions Live discussion, and I don't know, we're used to talking to you guys, but I'm not going to lie, I'm usually in my pajamas in my office.
Sipping your bourbon.
Sipping my bourbon. But yeah, no, it was fun. There was probably 200 people there. And I got to be with Boyd Martin and Margie Engel. So it was really an honor to be sitting on the stage with those two.
What was the format for this? What was going on?
Yeah, so every year, this is the second year they've done it, and they ask professional riders to come, and Jimmy Wofford does the interview. And so it's a lot of fun to listen to him, and he asks questions, and then people from the audience ask questions. I'm not going to lie, my dad got a question in. It's fun.
What did your dad ask you?
Well, he had a really good question, actually. He asked, how do you balance being a professional rider and also having international goals and dreams? And it was cute because I said, well, that is such a great question. And I said, everybody, I can't lie, that was my dad who asked that question. So everyone cheered, and my dad got up and took a bow, which is really cute. I said, actually, I think he's just so happy I make a living doing this job. Question.
He was probably dreaming about that when he was funding the thing when you were a teenager, right?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think my parents were the most excited that I was doing this event. It was so sweet. And my mom, obviously was a show jumper. So, the fact that I was sitting next to Margie Engel was pretty cool. But they were so cute. And, but I thought that was actually a good question. And, I don't know. I don't know if we've ever answered that, Phil, but.
Well, let's hear your answer.
So, my answer was, it is a challenge to run a business. And I think that's one of the hardest parts about what we do for a living is not every rider has to balance sort of having a stable and doing it, but a lot of riders do. You do it, I do it. Owning a stable is never easy because there's a lot of things that happen, as you're traveling. But for me, as
floods,
I said,
for example.
Floods, I had to have a really good manager that could handle a flood at my farm here while I was still in Florida and handled the horses there. I think you learn to be flexible. I think you learn to be creative. You have to do all those things. So that was kind of my answer, is that it's not an easy thing. Yeah, it's not actually an easy thing. And a lot of professional, swimmers don't have to really manage, they may have to make a living for themselves, but they don't have to manage like a whole stable. So I am lucky that I have had very good.
It's the animal aspect of it, right? The care. And yeah, I think it's down to your support team, your staff, right? Great. And, having people you can trust. And I think it also, comes back to, I think in any business, when you have employees that you rely on and that, that you have to compensate them really well.
Yep.
And appreciate them all the time for, everything that they do, and that allows, you to be able to go to competitions, to be away from the business and know that everything is going to be handled. So I think that's, you're not going to have a good support team if they don't feel like they're being valued, as employees and as people and who put a lot of work in and a lot of hours in. And so I think that's what it all comes down to, is the team aspect of it, right? Because none of us really do it, do the whole job on our own. That's good. That's good question and answer period. That sounds like a fun event.
It was great. It was a lot of fun. And, shopping was always fun there. Oh my goodness. The shopping is, oh boy.
Spending the dollars. Yeah.
Ooh, it was fun. But I didn't get anything that excited. I got a couple lead shanks. I know. Be careful. It went crazy. But it was a lot of fun. Like I said, the weather was beautiful and it was a really fun event. And I think everybody really enjoyed it. So yeah, for sure. Next time, Phil. And it was always fun. We always love to see listeners that come and say hi. It's so fun to see everybody when we're not,
Yeah, I gotta come down for the big event down there.
Have you ever come to Rolex?
No, it's just bad. It's just a horrible time of year.
Yeah, I know.
Because we're going full steam. We have to show in 2 weeks, so.
I know, it's crazy.
There's a big CDI coming, so it's just it's just the wrong time of year. We're in.
It's happening.
We'll go. Yeah, but at some point, I'll find an excuse and we'll get away and we'll come down to Kentucky.
We always love it when you do.
The sun is just peeking above the tree line as you walk into the barn. You grab your horse's halter off the hook and head out to the field. The dew shimmers in the sun as you walk across the damp grass. You call his name and his head comes up as he walks toward you, looking for the apple in your pocket. You take your time grooming, enjoying the peace and quiet in the empty barn. A refreshing breeze greets you as you start down the tree-lined path. Your horse ambles along on a loose rein as you both enjoy a relaxing ride. The feeling you get on an early morning hack is why we do what we do at Kentucky Performance Products. This feeling is brought to you by Microphase. Fill the nutritional gaps in your horse's diet. Microphase Vitamin and Mineral Supplement is a low-calorie way to provide your horse with the vitamins and minerals missing from their diet. The horse that matters to you matters to us.
Well, tonight we are so happy to have a listener on for a listener question of the month. Karina Marotte from California. How are you?
I'm actually from Washington, but I'm great.
Oh, perfect. Oh, sorry. You said West Coast. And I went right to California. Sorry, my bad.
That's where you're dreaming of being.
I know. I'm dreaming of California.
That's where you're thinking of California.
Well, Karina, tell us a little bit about where you are from and where in Washington you are.
Okay, so I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I'm about an hour north of Seattle and about an hour south of the Canadian border. So I'm, on the Puget Sound region, and this is where I grew up.
Oh, it's beautiful. It is beautiful there. So tell us a little bit about your horses.
Okay, so, right now I have an off-the-track thoroughbred that I recently had to retire. But before I had to do that, I was working with a dressage trainer with him. And sorry about the train in the background.
We like
it. And I typically do hunter jumper type stuff, and I dabble in fox hunting and stuff like that. So I like to run and jump and stuff like that.
And go fast.
Yeah, well, not so much anymore. Maybe when I was a kid. Like a more moderated pace now.
Oh, okay.
I love it. So tell us your listener question of the week. What you got for us?
Okay, so this is totally going to put you guys on the spot. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, we don't mind.
So
we got it.
Yeah.
So I was reading an article in Practical Horseman recently, where I think it was Practical Horse. It might have been Chronicle of the Horse, where George Morris was giving a clinic to some high-level eventers. And one of the things that really stuck out of my mind was one of George Morris's feedback to one of the eventers was, when you ask your horse to go forward, you always squeeze, you don't tap. Well, I learned on my off-the-track thoroughbred to tap him, just very lightly forward, not, kick, but just like tap, tap, tap to get him to move forward. So I was just wondering, I just wanted some background on when you might tap and when you might squeeze, because I have definitely learned both, depending on who my trainer was. And I'm guessing probably depending on which horse I was riding.
Yeah. So, this is a good question because you'll get a different answer from almost everyone that you ask. I've kind of learned both methods, but you're absolutely right in that it depends on the horse that you're riding. You have to kind of figure them out to figure out what's going to work best. As a general rule, the younger horses, I might use my leg a little bit more with the tap. And then as they develop and get, more advanced aids, more understanding, then I like to rest my leg a little bit against the horse. Instead of, the young guys, I like to have it, a little bit off because I don't want to give confusing signals to them. So I think the more basic aid is the little kick or the tap with the leg. And then as things become more sophisticated, I would use just, they're more used to a little bit of leg pressure. And I like to have them a little bit more closed underneath me. So, I'm talking maybe a second level horse where they've learned a little bit towards collection and a little bit of shoulder in trap. You got to be able to push them around a little bit and have them, in between your leg and your hand a little bit more consistently, all the way from halts and canter, everything that, the aids become you have a little bit more contact and in your reins. And so I like to have a little bit more contact in my leg at the same time. So it kind of, I hold them together a little bit, but the young guys, they don't know about all that stuff. So my leg is basically off most of the time unless I want something. And then I can be more clear with what the question is. And that's, for the forward aid, that's for the leg yielding aids. And, they get very nervous if you clamp your leg on a young horse right away. And you think that, it's hard to explain things to them that way. So, and it depends whether your horse likes to run away from the leg or is a little bit lazy to the leg. So if the horse is sensitive, like your off the track thoroughbreds, the little bit the hotter breeds, then I am actually going to hold my leg on more and use the squeezes instead of and then the horses that are a little bit more dead, I'm going to use more kicks, because it's just going to be more effective, so that's every situation is a little bit different. And it can be different in one day of training. Like you get on your horse and today is a little bit lazy, then I'm gonna use a little bit more kicks. And then tomorrow you got the point, I'm gonna be a lot quieter with my legs. So it's a complicated question, and everybody, all riders, trainers have a little bit their preference. I think it's just sort of like go with what works the best, and as long as you're not being too busy with your leg, banging them off the side all the time, then if it works for you, I think, do it. What do you think, Reese?
Okay.
Yeah, so I agree completely. It's a complicated question without seeing the horse and sort of knowing, the whole picture. But in general, when I put my leg on, and I think that's what I always tell people is your leg is essentially your gas pedal. And how you determine your leg depends on sort of, I give the analogy of a car. When I put my foot on the accelerator, I want to be driving a Ferrari. I mean, I want them to go. If they do not go, they're going to hear about it. And I'm going to start with a light tap. And then if they don't go forward from that, they're going to hear about it. Now, if I'm riding a horse for an adult amateur client who's maybe a little bit tentative, I'm going to more think of the accelerator like, I don't know. Help me out here. Toyota. Ford Tempo. I mean, except Ford Tempo, whatever.
I drive a Ford Tempo.
Yeah, Ford Tempo. Exactly. You know what that feels like. It's not the Ferrari, right? So, when you put your foot on the Ford Tempo, it will go forward, but it's not going to zoom out. It's the same idea, right? And that's what I like to say. So if it still means that car's going to go or my horse is going to go forward, but I'm not going to be like a blast off type situation. So again, I think it depends on the type of horse and the reaction that you're looking for. And again, does that make sense to everybody? Like what I'm trying to communicate?
Yeah, I think it also, I was just going to add that it depends on like what kind of rider you are. If you tend to be a little bit too much of a busy rider, then your trainer is going to look at that and say, let's use more squeezes, so it's a combination problem, right? And if you're a rider that really, there's a lot of riders that really squeeze with their lower leg and they're not getting results, that day your trainer might say, hey, let's use a little bit more kicks and demand a little bit more on your horse. So again, you can have one trainer give two different instructions on 2 different days.
Yeah.
Or 2 different riders on the same horse, or the same rider on 2 different horses. It's a kind of an overall picture sort of thing. So you have to kind of determine a few things. So you're riding a lazy horse, fast horse. Are you a busy rider, or a busy rider needs to be made more quiet, and a real, squeeze powerful rider needs to be a little bit more quick and effective in the way that they use their aids. So this is why you see such variation in trainers teaching lessons, and maybe this lesson with George Morris. I think it's one of those things that there's no perfect answer for everyone, and there's no wrong answer for everyone, right? I don't like the black and white. Okay, everybody needs to ride like this. Every horse needs to go like this. We have to modify things and make the overall picture what we're looking for.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, because the article about George Morris, I mean, for purposes of publishing, there could have been some context taken out or just wasn't included in the article in the first place.
Yeah.
And also for my own riding, I think what my trainer was trying to get across to me is that my thoroughbred, very super sensitive, so she wanted me to kind of keep my leg like kind of snuggled up to him, just like when we were in motion. And then when we wanted to make an upward transition, then I would give him a little tap. So it would there would be a difference to him.
A clarity in the aid, right? Like, so you're not squeezing and then squeezing more and squeezing, and then that will actually cause the horse to be a little bit confused, or, maybe a little bit dead to the leg. So you've got a goal in mind, like what do I want to create here, and how do I create that picture?
Right.
So it's tough in those articles that you don't get much context, or even in a training ride, you'll a trainer will say something, but there's the context doesn't come without having a conversation like we're having now. Like, you should talk to the trainer if there's a question and answer period. Maybe not in the moment that somebody's teaching a lesson, but just to say, here you said this. Just for clarity, do you think that that's how you should? Every horse should, and in all situations, is that what you think, or was that for this horse and rider specifically, and why or why not? So when I'm watching lessons, or we go to these great clinics and stuff, you got to have a little bit of a notepad going just to say, oh, he said this, and then what would some follow-up questions be for that to give an auditor context for all of these instructions. And I think that's really important. Otherwise you go home and what works for that, what was instructed for that horse and rider is not going to work for you. And you say, well, Charlotte Dujardin says this, I have to ride like this. Well,
Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Like that's.
I mean, I would like to. Everyone wants to ride like her, but let's be real, Phil. But I'm just kidding. But it's so true. I mean, I think it's the same on our show, right? We can only give as much information, and articles are wonderful, and they all help with the kind of the learning journey. But I think it does depend, and that's why it's good to have the conversation and to talk to your trainer. I think these are always good things to talk to your trainer about. And that's I like when people bring in questions like, hey, I read this, I don't understand. It needs to be the right time to ask someone. Don't ask as I'm trying to run out the door. But I think it's all part of the journey, and reading is wonderful, but they are writing for publication purposes, which is different. So yeah. Well, we hope that helps. Thank you so much for your listener question. That was super fun. And as always, everybody, we like to have people on the program to ask us questions in person. We love it. So, Karina, thank you so much for everything, and we wish you luck with your horse. Stay in touch.
All right. Thank you so much.
This week's dressage training tip is brought to you by Total Saddle Fit, home of the shoulder relief girth at TotalSaddleFit.com.
Well, Phil, we've got a great Total Saddle Fit tip of the week, but tell us a little bit about what you found on the Total Saddle Fit website.
Well, I was shopping the other day,
yes,
and
I know.
I think they've added this, and then we didn't talk about it with Justin, but they've added a 110% money back guarantee on their products. And I thought that was so awesome that we would just, highlight that for our commercial bit today, and tell all of our listeners that you can order a girth, you can order the 6-point saddle pad. If you don't like it, 30 days, you have to return it, and they will refund 110% of your money. So that will hopefully cover most of your shipping. So it's a win-win proposition. 30 days, that's a long time. It's not 10 days or whatever. So you can return your product that, you didn't like, it didn't work for you, whatever, and they're just going to give you that refund. So I thought that was a perfect thing to highlight this week. If you're thinking about trying the saddle pads or the girths, or just go ahead and do it, you're not going to lose out. So that was my point.
Awesome. I love it. Well, no, it's a great company, and Justin is so easy to work with, and he was on the show a couple weeks ago, and we always appreciate him answering questions. If you ever have questions, let us know. So I love it. Well, Phil, what's our tip of the week?
Well, we got this question in, another listener question, and it's about getting their horse to stand. So we know that in dressage, you have to begin your test with a halt. And the horse should stand for a 3-second count, so you can do your salute and you can move off and begin your test, and you do your whole pattern. Then you got to come back down the center line, and you got to halt again, and you got to have your 3-second immobility. So if there's not any other halts in the middle of the test, there's 2 halts there. This listener wants to know how to teach their horse to stand. So I thought that I'd throw that at you this week there, Reese.
I like it. Well, first of all, this is a skill, right? And it's a skill that we practice every day, and we really do that on purpose. We want to practice that every day because we want the horses, minimum in each dressage test, you have 20 points in a horse standing still. So it's important. And some of them hate it, and some of them really have to learn. I'm sorry, I know you hate this, but I'm really not asking you to do anything hard. So, Phil, you and I sometimes have the luxury. I have stayed on horses and taught lessons on them until they learn to stand still. I have. I mean, I'm not hurting them. I'm not doing anything. I'm just like, once you stand still, I will get off of you. But that's when they're really bad, is I'll just stay on them and just sit there until they behave themselves. So that's part of one of the things that I do. The other thing is I do a lot of walk halts in the beginning. Now, again, this isn't a very, 4-year-old horse, right? This is a horse that's getting ready to go to the horse show. And I do the walk halts, number one, to sort of test the 2 things I think a dressage horse should always do. I think you can add in a third, but a dressage horse, or any horse, really should stop and go. So if you have problems with stop and go, you need to work on it. So every ride in the beginning, I always start with stop and go. So just to test. So that's the one thing that I like to do. So my horses are getting it every day in when we're working. So they're learning, I need to stop and I need to stand. And so I think that that's really important. And then I do try to do center lines every week with every horse, at least a few of them. So it's not just horse show week. It's just part of their daily routine is you go up the center line, and if you're an FEI horse, you canter in and halt. And if you're a younger guy or lady, you trot in and halt. So I try to add that in sort of my general training. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a discipline thing. It can be very tricky. I'm speaking from experience here. I got a horse that I'm working on right now. He is very quiet. So when I ride him and I'm preparing him, for test riding and, just in general, I've got to pump him up a little bit, get him a little bit hot off the leg. And then he gets a little hot and he does not like to stand. Yeah. So, I'm approaching this problem with him, on a daily basis. Like I can get on, walk around, he'll halt, no problem. At the end of my ride, if I give him the reins and we've done a couple of laps, he'll halt, stand there, no problem. But it's all that in between, in the middle stuff. So I'm practicing, doing, a big circle and then coming to a halt. So within one ride, it's a tricky balance because you don't want to do like a million halts and just focus on that because it'll make him crazy, right?
Right.
But it is an important kind of skill. So I make a little compromise in the beginning, and I've got a few little strategies that I like to use, and that I have been using. I've been working on him with this. So in the beginning, he would, he'd get trotting along, and then I will not try and trot to halt immediately. I will allow the horse to, walk into it, but he would walk into it, and then he would halt, and then he would try and make a little step forward. And when I wouldn't let him step forward, and then he started to get this idea of backing up. So my strategy to deal with that, because it's easy to not allow him to go forward, I just apply the reins, and he's like, okay, but then he's like, oh, and then I'm going to back up. So then I would come around a corner, I would halt, he would try and step forward, and then I wouldn't let him, and then he would start to step backwards. Well, I would halt him very close to after the corner, so that when he stepped back, I would restrict the rein. He'd step back until he got to the wall, and then he couldn't move anymore.
Yep.
And then he would dance a little bit, and then he would halt. He would just, he had no choice. Give up. He would halt. He would give up, and big breath. It might take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. It doesn't matter how long it takes. I just, I'm not going to pull on the reins. I'm not going to kick on him, but just stand. You have to be really super, super quiet with your body, super quiet with your hands. And like I said, you make a few little compromises. So if he wanted to bring his head up, kind of off the bit idea, that's fine with me. He could bring his head up as long as he was immobile and he wasn't flinging his head around.
Yep.
And then so you go. I did that for about a week. He got pretty good at that. He understood it, right? That he couldn't go forward, and he could go back until there was a wall there. And then you kind of build on these things. You come up with a plan that says, okay, what can I compromise on? What can I not compromise on? And how do I build a plan towards having a nice immobile halt 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, 6 months from now? It depends on how bad the horse is, right? You got to make a plan and continue with it. So then the next week I would not halt him in the corner and see if I could, not let him go forward, and also try and not let him go back either. And again, I'm not talking about a super round halt. Not talking about him halting square. Move. I don't care. Just don't move.
Yeah. And
so he went through a little bit the phase of, okay, I'm not going to move my legs, but I'm going to kind of fling my head up and down and to the side. Yeah. And I was like, that's so frustrating. Like you just want to strangle him. But you got to stand there and
patience.
Each of these halts probably took me 5 minutes. Just standing there, just being so quiet with my body, and just like he's flinging his head around. There's nothing I can do about it, right? You see riders get aggressive with their hands, but then the legs start to move again. So then then you're kind of back to square one, right? Once I got immobile legs, I just had to wait until the head stopped moving, and I would use, you can use your voice a little bit. When he's flinging his head around, it's kind of like, no. And when he's good, I'm like, oh, good boy. And then I would walk off and continue with what I was doing, whether it was a little leg yield, working on the lengthenings a little bit, canter transition, whatever. And then, do that for a couple minutes and then come back and say, okay, now can we halt again? It's just about really having a structured plan and being so patient, right?
Yeah.
And just, being able to really just sit immobile and to not yank and not to kick, and just because it's just, you're going to make your problem more frantic and worse, right? So, I mean, a lot of horse training is just patience. So I would say we're gotten a lot better. He's not where I would like him to be yet, but I know that there is light at the end of the tunnel because my plan is working, right? Like I'm just pressing through the things. And eventually I know that maybe not for this show season, but eventually I'm going to have my nice square immobile halt because, it's just consistency with the plan and just,
But it takes time.
It takes time. Horses that are really bad, I would use a sugar.
Yeah.
I would make them stand, and I would say, when they're good, I get them to reach around and take a sugar from me, and that's just nerves, right? It's just, I gotta go, I gotta do this. The horse isn't being bad; he's just kind of nervous, and like I said, this horse is a little bit too quiet in the riding. We'd plod along, and so I had to make a plan to fix that problem. But fixing that problem made a problem in the halts. So it's just like, but that's why it takes years and years and years and years to train a horse to Grand Prix, because you come up, you think you don't have a problem, then the next week you do have a problem, and you got to fix that, and you got to go backwards with the training and then forwards, and that just takes so much long. And it's not don't get frustrated, make a plan, follow through. Eventually, I know you can train a horse that I think every horse you can train one way or another to halt quietly. Teach them to like it, right? Like you said, if you have to spend an extra hour or whatever, that's fine. Just carve out enough time in your day to train that horse.
To train that horse to stand still.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love it. Well, as always, everyone, you can find our show notes and links to today's guests on our website, dressageradio.com. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
I think the best way to find me is on Facebook, or you can email me at philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week for allowing us to put on a good show. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down and your shoulders back, and we'll talk to you next week.